Morgan. Thank
Hey,
you. Thank you
hey,
for joining me
Shay.
today. It's so
Thank
lovely to have you on. I'm so excited because I'm both a reader as well as like a wannabe writer, as well as maybe an entrepreneur, entrepreneur newbie, if you want to
Yep.
call it that. So you, I just know, are going to have all this wisdom to share with us, and we'll hear more about Paper Raven books too, which everyone will be absolutely fascinated by. But I just read that you started out in academia as a sociologist. Now, I don't know many people. I was in academia for a short period of time, and certainly not in the sociology area. There's like no entrepreneurs in that space. Where did this come from?
Well, my to be fair, my parents are entrepreneurs, right? So I grew up
Oh, okay.
totally different industry, right? My parents buy and sell mineral rights, which are the rights to minerals below the surface. So that's
Okay.
where oil and gas drilling happens. I'm from like small town West Texas. If you've ever seen Friday Night Lights, that is very accurate for
Oh
how
my
small town West Texas is. But so my dad was an entrepreneur, for all of my childhood, pretty much.
God.
But I didn't have any sense of how he started his business or ran his business or anything like that. My family was so bookish. We always had lots of books, lots of
Yeah.
reading, lots of, love of finding a new good book. And so when I was doing well in school, I was high school newspaper editor, did well in university, all the theses and stuff like that. I had a professor who I really looked up to, was a mentor of mine, who said, you'd make a great professor. And I was like, well, that's a heck of a compliment. Sure. Do you think I could do it? I'm over here like 20, young 20 something, not really sure what I want to do in life. And so did the whole thing with the exams and the letters of recommendation and all the applications. And my fiance at the time was also applying to law school. So we we're just, doing that whole process together, really. And I landed in a great doctoral program for sociology, great on paper. Great, faculty, well-researched R1 institution, like everything that you would want. I was getting paid to be a doctoral student, which was, a pretty sweet gig as a 22-year-old.
No kidding.
But I didn't thrive there, and I wasn't really sure why. It was so different. It was entrepreneurial in a way, in that you had to define your own research focus and really go after that topic that was going to become your dissertation and would be the beginnings of your tenured professorship, right? It was like, that's going to be your research vein. And I just never found anything that was like my cup of tea, I guess. So what I ended up doing was helping other students and junior faculty with their research.
Oh,
I
how
was reading
interesting.
their papers, their theses, their dissertations, their articles. I was editing and kind of writing coaching and being a sounding board for their research. And then after a couple of years, I had the master's degree in my hand, and I was like, do I want to keep going? So I ended up leaving, which was a big decision, when you're in a young 20 something. And at that point, actually, I was also pregnant with my first child, and we were moving to New York for my husband's job. And I was like, I have no idea what I'm doing in life, but I guess I'm not going to be a professor. So, but
Right.
I mean, and that said, I did actually teach sociology at the college level on Long Island, Molloy College. I was there through when we had our first couple of babies in New York. But yeah, it was just not a great fit, and I think some of us maybe experience that, whether it's a academic program or a job or something. We're just like, I don't know, it just doesn't feel like me. And it takes a lot sometimes to get up and leave.
It does take, it takes a lot of courage. So, okay, so you're a mom of how many?
Right now we have 4.
Four. So, ladies, hear this. She's got a business going. She's got 4 babies and a husband, I'm assuming.
Yeah, still the husband is still sticking around with us. Yes, the crazy hasn't gotten to him that much.
It's a lot of balls in the air. My goodness. So, at what point did you say, I have to do something more than being a mom? I have to do something more than being a wife. And did that come from, I got to do something for Morgan?
Mm.
Where did this happen? Where did this come from?
Hoboken, New Jersey, winter of
I
2010.
remember.
We'd moved to the city, sort of. Hoboken, New Jersey is kind of like across the river because my husband's an attorney. So he was doing that big law thing, which is fine when you're single, but when you're doing one income with the family and all this, it was tough. So we were looking for a cheaper place to live. And it was my first real winter. So I'm from Texas,
Right.
You know, we'd gone to school in Colorado, but Colorado's winters are not that bad. And then grad school in Tennessee. So, you know, like not really exposed to this. So first baby, she's like 9 months old. We're living in this tiny apartment and it snows for like months and months and months. And it's just me and that baby. And I'm like, losing my ever living mind is what's happening. And so I started applying for like all the random sort of side gigs and side hustles, and eventually realized that a skill that I have is editing. I'd been doing it in grad school. Also learned that there's a thing called writing coaching, which really only became a thing in the last, I don't even know, 15, 20 years. It was a new thing. Like, what is a writing coach? Someone to talk to while you're writing. But just started doing that freelance on the side, really, and reached back out to my academic colleagues and said, I'm now available for freelance editing. Do you have any referrals? That sort of thing to really start growing that freelancing business. And I did freelance for years, 5-6 years, in addition to teaching and having kiddos. And of course there were, you know, nannies and stuff like that, or babysitters involved to sort of compartmentalize life.
So how important was it though that you chose to take care of you in that process? That you did, because it wasn't easy. It would have been much easier to just be a stay-at-home mom, I'm assuming.
Yeah, I guess, but it didn't feel easy. It felt like I did not want to be, it's gonna sound terrible. I just didn't want to be with my kids all those hours.
It doesn't sound terrible. I hear that. I'm a coach and I've heard that over and over and over. Like when women go back after maternity leave to the office and people say, you must be so sad. And they said, how could I have said, no, not really? You know, we might have to edit that out. But truly.
But it's the truth, right? I mean, a few hours at a time and they are lovely. But like from like 6 a.m. to 10 p.m. and you're like, I'm going to lose my mind.
Well, yes, you do eventually. I was a stay-at-home mom and honestly, you know, I'm of a different generation than you. I would never recommend to my younger self to go do that again. I really wouldn't, because you invest too much time in your education, in things, you know, thinking through things that you learned. I'm a really good editor. I think I want to do something with this. If you had never pursued that, you wouldn't have connected to those parts of you that you excel at that have nothing to do with being a mom, have nothing to do with even being a wife or a daughter, you know.
And it was a conversation because, I mean, basically I was making as much money as was going to the babysitter, you know, whether I was teaching or freelance editing. I tried to do most of my freelance editing at night and at nap times and things like that to try to help. But it was, you know, a pretty much zero sum kind of game. And it basically became like, sure, Morgan, you can explore this. Can you make enough money to pay, you know, Laura to come on Tuesdays and Thursdays for 6 or 8 hours each day? And that was really like, we just had to be really frank about that conversation. My husband had to be on board. So I really had to enroll him in my vision for like this life of being a like stay-at-home mom, like I sort of thought might work. As it turns out, it's not working for me. I want to do something more and really having to, you know, it all comes down to persuasion in some form or fashion, right? You have to persuade the other person who's in life with you that this is a good idea for both of you. So luckily my husband's a good sport. He's come along the whole journey, the whole ride.
Okay, so you were freelancing, working pretty much as a writing coach, fitting it in, and when did Paper Raven Books happen?
So we started as Paper Raven Editing. That was the initial sort of doing business as that I filed back in, I don't even know when I filed that. I maybe filed it in 2013 as like an official business. I had been a freelance editor since 2008, 2000, something like that, 2007, 2008. And so we're talking 5-6 years as Paper Raven Editing. And that was also the year that I was starting to do more marketing online, taking online business courses, trying to figure out this whole world, and started to get enough clients that I realized, wait, I don't think I have to do all the editing anymore. You know, like I think I could bring editors on to work under me. And so I went out to Upwork, which was, I don't even know if Upwork still exists, but like a freelance,
Mhm.
network. And said, I'm looking for editors, and I would pay them, a certain amount, and then I would make sure that the business, Paper Raven Editing, kept a certain margin on each project, basically. And so it was a pretty simple model to start with. And then we worked with dozens of clients on their books, and we started cultivating book clients. So really seeking to work with books, and we had
Outside of
enough.
academia, these were people who wanted to publish, because I see a broad cross section on your website, Paper Raven Books, in which you've published from nonfiction to romance to mysteries to you name it. Yeah.
Yeah, so early days it was pretty bread and butter was nonfiction. So it was a professor who wanted to write a trade book. Those were some of the early ones. But then it became more and more like someone who's been a therapist or a speaker or a consultant or a coach, like writing their own book. And those folks, they want someone who understands research, who understands conveying data and things like that. So we were a good match for those nonfiction books, especially in the early days. And then they would come back to us a couple, like a year or two later and say, thank you for helping me to edit this book. It's a Word document. No one has agreed to publish it. Can you help me to publish the book? And I said, well, I don't know how to publish a book. I know how to write a book and how to coach someone writing a book and how to edit a book. But I don't know how to publish a book. And that was 2015. And finally I had probably 6 or 7 clients who said, when you figure it out, I want to be first guinea pig, please. And so I said, okay, fine. I'm going to write my own book. It is very straightforwardly called Start Writing Your Book Today. It's a methodology on how to write a book. And I figured out how to publish it, took the notes along the way. And I said, okay, we can create a system out of this. And went back to those clients and said, okay, you said you want to be a guinea pig. Here's what we're charging to self-publish your book with you. And I went out back to, my networks and said, I need someone to help with design. I need someone to help with formatting. And we just put together this team and started this process. And that was in 2015. So we did a handful of books that year, just figuring out the best practices and how this all works, doing a lot on Amazon, trying to figure out that Amazon algorithm, what makes it, really click into place. And now, 7 years later, we're doing 50 books in a year. And we now, because we have such an editorial team, we don't need to just do nonfiction. Sure, we're still, rock solid in nonfiction, but we can also do memoir and fiction, and especially trilogies, because we figured out how to really market the book well. Was what we were really the nut we were cracking is, yes, you can publish a book. As it turns out, publishing is not even that tricky, but really launching it in a way that gets the visibility, gets the readers, gets that the reviews on the book, and helps the author to really connect with the right segment of readers. So that's the nut we've been cracking for the past few years.
So what part of that, are you still involved in all the different steps or all parts of the process? And if not, is there some aspect of that just totally jazzes you? You love because it's a changing world all the time.
Yeah. So I do a lot of the sales and marketing for the business, right? So I am delivering the webinars and writing the emails and really thinking about how could people come to know about Paper Raven Books, and really being that kind of the spokesperson for the company. And I'm also the sort of main researcher for how could we improve this process? That's really I'm like the innovator of thinking about how could we get the book into, different online stores or different bookstores, or how could we get into different readership communities? Could we build readership communities? That's kind of where my brain spends a lot of its time, because the actual delivery process is so solid now. We have 8 contractor team members who are on retainer in every project, every day, plus specialists who come in for certain types of projects. And so, everything is systematized out. We've got checklists galore. Everyone knows timelines. Everyone knows all the FAQs. Everyone knows the process kind of inside and out. And so I'm brought in to consult on occasion. If we run into something new or unusual, I'll come in and consult and try to figure out how can we do this differently.
What would be new or unusual? Tell me more about that. Is it a problem with a writer? Is it a problem with a topic of a writer?
So for instance, one of the things we're thinking a lot about now is audiobooks, because
Yeah.
audiobooks continue to rise in popularity.
Yes.
And for many years, it was very easy. It was like, well, we put it on Audible inside of ACX. We recently we have an author who's just about to launch, who's out of the UAE, not in the US.
Okay.
And he actually cannot use Audible. And so we're thinking, well, oh, can we use, like Spotify recently acquired an audiobook company called Findaway Voices. Can we, use that? What are some other ways? But if it's in Spotify, audiobooks, how do we use our Amazon presence to let people know that the book is on Spotify? So it's those kinds of like things that are a little bit unusual, either because of the author's location, just all the tech pieces are not all fitted together yet. We also sometimes I'm brought in to consult on like if an author wants to do some live events and wants to think about different pros and cons. Should I get 1,000 books printed and bring them with me to sell on location?
Yeah.
Or should I go to bookstores and ask the bookstores to order my book? Maybe each bookstore would order 50 or 100 copies of the book and I could do an event there. So I kind of come in and help the author think about the different marketing possibilities for the book. And then of course the team can make it happen. But if we're kind of trying to make decisions like that, then I'll often come in and just help facilitate that decision.
Yeah, very strategic and creative too, in seeing connections that the average person may not. So, question, because so many people talk about there's a book in them. They've got the book, they want to have a book, or they're coaches, or they're not necessarily coaches, but say even a yoga therapist or something of that sort, and they want to write a book, but they just don't know. And I talked to somebody just recently who started a business. I actually started a blog because she had a book and she went to New York to visit with an agent. This was a number of years ago, and the agent said, do you have a platform? Does anyone know who you are? And she said, well, I have like 4 Facebook friends. And this was in like 2011 or something. And they said, you can't sell a book unless you have a presence. Now that was 2011. Can you speak to that? Like just from the standpoint, this is a bit of advice for someone who's already got a business, maybe doesn't have a very big platform or following, if you want to call it that. Yeah. Do you write the book to get the following, or do you need the following to write the book or publish the book?
I love it, Shari. You're like right on like the heart of the question. Like you nailed it. That's the big debate for both publishers and for authors. And so I will say that you can actually go either way. You really can.
Love that.
You can do either way. They're both possible. There will be different avenues depending on which way you go. So maybe it would be helpful for me to talk about the 4 different sort of publishing options that are available, sort of at a broad scope. And that can help us to see, okay, do I fit more on this side or more on this side? So traditional publishing is kind of the name brands that we're familiar with, right? Penguin, Random House, Simon Schuster, those big publishing houses. They absolutely want someone who has a following because they want someone who can help them sell the books. And so, typically the route there is that you write a proposal if it's a nonfiction book. If it's a fiction book, you write the whole manuscript. You go out and you try to get an agent, and that agent will shop the manuscript or the proposal to different publishing houses. You'll see who's interested. If you have more than one publishing house interested, they might even bid. I have a friend who's going through this process right now. And so it still happens. Like she's got a 6-figure advance in her hand as an option. And so it still happens. She has a massive following.
Oh, right. Interesting.
She built the online business. She has sorry.
That's okay.
She built the online business. She has hundreds of thousands of followers and subscribers and thousands of customers, right? And so as a traditional publishing house, you think, well, that would be great. She could help us sell books, right? We can sell books to her audience.
Maybe they don't know how to sell books.
It has become trickier, right? That's a lot of reason why they're looking for people with big platforms, is because it was easy back in 2005 when they could just send books to Barnes and Noble and readers were coming into Barnes and Noble and readers would buy the books there. Like, it was easy. But now so many people are buying everything online, including books. And so they need help. So they're looking for people who've cracked this online marketing formula, who already have 100,000 or more subscribers or followers or people on their email list, and they will partner with them to produce a book.
Okay.
I realize I'm painting in broad strokes here. So there may be smaller traditional publishers that don't need as many followers, but they want to know, how are you, author, going to help us sell these books? Is the big question in their mind.
Right.
Around the advent of the Kindle, it was right around then, 2005, 2007, the Kindle came onto the marketplace and made it easy for people to basically upload a Word document. It would go onto the Kindle platform, and then people could access the book through their Kindles. So that was when self-publishing really took off.
Okay.
And so self-publishing is definitely still very much an option. It's gotten easier and easier over the years. And the good news is you just get to decide when you're going to publish your book. Now you have to pay for your own editor, your own designer, your own formatter, and get the book out there. And then once it's available, now it can be available as an ebook, a paperback, a hardback, a large print, an audiobook, all these versions. It's on you to also figure out who's going to buy the book, right? And get it out to them. And so then this other type of publishing company really came in to try to split the difference. It's called hybrid publishing.
Okay.
So hybrid publishing is where you both contribute to producing the book. So the author pays, $5,000, $10,000, $15,000, and the publisher kicks in a similar amount. And together you produce the book. If it's a good hybrid publisher, they will be able to help get the book into bookstores. And then you'll also split the royalties, maybe 50-50 on the back end, something like that.
Yeah.
Some hybrid publishers have distribution to bookstores, some don't. Some will help with editing, some won't. Some put the book files into their account with their password locking it. Some will give you access. So there's some questions that people really need to ask. And Shari, I'd be happy to share with you a list of questions that I encourage people to ask, and we can put those in the show notes or wherever would be helpful.
I think people would like that.
Yeah. And then really in the last, I would say 10 years or so, this fourth option has popped up called self-publishing services. That's where Paper Raven fits in. It is more for people who like the idea of self-publishing. They don't mind footing the bill. They don't mind paying for editing and design and all that sort of thing, so long as they get the benefits of self-publishing as well. The book is theirs. It's their creative vision, their legal rights, their profits, all that is theirs. And so then it becomes about finding a really high quality self-publishing services company, a team that really knows what they're doing and will do the work to your specifications. We'll do good work the way you want it done. And so those are the four types. And so typically if someone wants the big publisher, you got to go out there and get your following going. It's easier for nonfiction. We are able to, grow an email list, get on podcasts, do interviews, and start to get our name out there. Fiction folks, it's harder. As a fiction novelist, how do you grow a following before you have a book? I feel like that's a pretty tricky double standard, chicken or egg situation.
My story's pretty good.
Yeah.
Really, my memoir is fantastic.
Exactly. I write good. You should follow me.
Exactly.
It's so tough. And so there's plenty of case studies or use cases where it's like, you should write the book first, right? Yeah. I mean, I did that. I had 75 people on an email list. Basically, it was my clients on an email list when I wrote my book. Super small following, built my business off the back of that book. And we have many, coaches and consultants. They've spent their career in corporate. You don't have an email list. You don't need an email list in corporate, right? I'm an expert. I've been doing this for 2 or 3 decades. That's my credibility. And so you can go and you can write a book and you can use that book tour. You can use the publication, the launch of the book as your reason to go out and do the interviews and, do the guest posting and the articles and all that and get your platform going that way. So, you can do it both ways. And it really, for when people come and talk to me about publishing a book, the conversation I'm usually having with them is it worth it? Is there really going to be a return on investment for you? And it looks different for every type of book. For nonfiction, it might be, is there a business case or a speaking case or a consulting case for you to write this book? For memoir, it might be, you know, are you starting a nonprofit, maybe? Or
Right.
are you going to do speaking or host workshops or really help people in this area of your life that you're speaking about or writing about? And for fiction, it's, are you going to write more than one book? Like, we don't all get to be Harper Lee and produce To Kill a Mockingbird and like retire off the proceeds. Most fiction authors these days, the return on investment comes because they're writing 3 or more books in their lifetime as a career, their career as an author.
Okay.
So they're gathering their readership. And that's for that reason, we like to publish multiple fiction books, 2 or 3 fiction books at a time, to help them launch those books back to back to back and gather that readership.
Wow.
So hopefully does that kind of help give a little bit of an
Yeah,
overview?
I think it's fantastic. I think it was so great though for a person to recognize, where do I fit in? Because there was a part of me that heard the traditional publisher, you know, the standard ones, that there's a little prestige at the cocktail party saying, you know, the book's been published by blah, blah, blah. But yet I sense that's almost kind of going by the wayside to some extent. Okay, is that true?
It really is. We used to talk a lot about whether self-publishing was a good idea because it's going to look bad for my credibility. We don't have those conversations anymore.
Oh,
Not really, no.
this
And
changed.
now you can self-publish your first book or books and get picked up by a traditional publisher later on. Totally, it happens a lot these days. Yeah.
If that's something you so wish to do. Yeah. So I noticed though in your, you called it Publishing Success Program. I love that. Um, are there people who come to you at all different stages of the book? Like, I've got this idea, here's my outline. Do you think it's worth going after, Morgan? Or, you know, do I need to go back to the drawing board?
Yeah.
Or I've got it laid out. This is a winner.
We get all sorts.
Everything in between. I love that.
We get all sorts. On our website, you'll see kind of like our 4 phases that we, you know, conceive of the creation of a book, right? Phase 1 is content development. That's actually coming up with the structure and the narrative flow of the book and actually writing the thing. You know, phase 2 is comprehensive editing, which for us includes developmental, copy, proofreading, those sorts of things. Phase 3 is the actual publication, the design inside and out, and actually publishing it to launch well on the Amazon platform. And then the 4th phase is really launching, going after the publicity. And for us, that includes podcast tour, helping to build your email list, book awards, endorsements, promotions, things like that. So when we think of what a book needs to be successful, it's all 4 phases.
Yeah.
Someone might have already written a book, so we don't have to do the content development. We just look at, you know, phases 2, 3, and 4, you know, or sometimes they will have already worked with a professional editor. We do a manuscript review to kind of double check that the editing really was professional, you know, but if it looks good and we get our, you know, our editorial team's thumbs up, we're like, cool, we can just go straight to publishing if it really is ready. So we work with people, we're a small team, everything's custom. So we work with the individual on kind of what they need.
And what's the time period? So let's say someone starts at phase 1, you know, they're coming in, they have the ideas, but they have to actually sit down and write the content. Is this a 1-year program typically that they work with you? And how often are they hearing from people at Paper Raven Books?
Yep. So it's a 12-month program if we're doing all 4 phases. And the first phase, sort of that content development, is usually about 3 or 4 months. And you work directly with one of our senior book coaches who's helping you with the structure and the outline and really sitting down and submitting new writing every single week, getting written feedback from your book coach every week, and on the phone with them twice a month to really talk through the new ideas and what works and what's not working. And our goal is within 3 or 4 months, we're hitting somewhere around, call it 40,000 or 50,000 words, which is pretty typical for a nonfiction book. That may expand, you know, it may be that you're a very prolific writer and you write faster and it hits 60, 70, 80,000, something like that. But, you know, we don't want to scare people. It is very normal for a first draft to kind of hit 40 or 50,000 words. And then afterward, we take it into editing. So we have multiple passes of editing. In that editorial time frame, the manuscript may expand a little bit, it may get trimmed, maybe both in different areas. So that takes another probably 3 months or so. And so now we're hitting, what is that, 6 or 7 months. And then it takes 4 or 5 months basically to go through publication and prep for launch.
So you're speaking though to something, and I think people need to hear this, that committing to writing a book is a job. It is a career path. It is an entrepreneurial venture. It's not like you're going to write it in your closet, come out of the closet and then show up and it's going to get published or be put on Amazon, and you don't have to go anywhere. Those days are gone. You don't have to talk to anyone. You don't have to go anywhere because you're an introvert. I can relate. And the book is just going to be fantastic. Those days. So I bring this up only because I think in any venture that someone goes after, anything that someone wants to start today, you really have to know what is it I want, why do I want it, and what is it going to take to do it. And you're describing this is a significant decision in a person's life to say, I'm going to publish a book. I'm going to write and publish a book and get it sold.
Yeah, exactly. I'm gonna pop my head out to talk to a kiddo, and I'll come right back, but I'm hoping we can edit.
Yeah, absolutely. Not a problem. Talk to a kiddo. I love that.
My 5-year-old has a ear infection. So
no.
I kept my 7-year-old home from school to babysit the 5-year-old. 7-year-old off doing something else. It was worth trying.
This is real life. Well, we'll get into how do you balance? How do you put on different hats?
But I do want to circle back on your question.
Yeah.
So I think you're exactly right. I'm not sure that it ever was this idea of I write one book and I'm set. There were outliers. I mentioned Harper Lee. That might have happened. I don't know that was ever a common case. I think for many authors, they did book tours for 12 to 18 months. They would pre-sell the book for like 6 months, and then they would continue to market the book for another year after they launched the book. That was very common. You were going to towns and you were on the local TV news radio. You were doing a book signing at the bookstore. I mean, heck, we even have like historical records of like Mark Twain. I mean, that was obviously his pen name, writing letters to his readers, and like that was part of his job as an author, was to respond to those letters and to help, cultivate a relationship with his readership base as a published author. So we've always had to do things like that. And I also think you're right in that it is even more apparent to us now, because we see authors who are trying different types of publishing, and it just sort of seems like all of them are a heck of a lot of work when it comes down to it. And you've got to really want it. You've got to see what's this book going to make possible for me, and that has to be a part of the decision, basically.
Yes. So it's not just a financial decision, because whether you self-publish 100% or you go to Paper Raven Books, it's going to cost you money. And so the real question is how it's from a financial standpoint, you're making a financial commitment, but you're also based, hoping that there's return down the road. But also, obviously, it's an incredible amount of time that you are committing to almost one one business, if you want to call it that, and that's the business of my book. If in fact someone is writing a book, would you agree to that? Is that
I 100% agree, Shari, and that's one of the reasons why we have switched around a little bit how we have our first touch points with potential authors that we would work with. Now we do ask everyone to go through a process with us. It takes about a month where we are sitting down with them and we're looking at two things. Is my book idea or book content any good? And will my book sell?
okay?
So we're working, we have the author come in and work directly with one of our senior book coaches on the content. Maybe they already have something written, and so we can review what they've written, or maybe it's an idea and we can help them really start to flesh out that idea, and we can talk about that book idea in really concrete terms. And we're looking at a market analysis. So we're going deep into on Amazon, for instance, when we're looking at keywords, are people looking for a book like this? When you go into categories, are there other books in this category where this book could compete? Comparable titles. Are there other books that are selling in this, topic or genre or niche? And so we, and then at the end of that month, we pull all of our data points together, notes and reactions and thoughts from the book coaching side, as well as from the marketing side. And we put it all together and have a really kind of a heart to heart. I have the heart to heart with the author, and I'm like, here's what we think, on the content side and on the marketing side. And let's have a frank discussion on whether this could really be worth your while. And, if they decide, yes, let's go for it, we take that payment for that particular program and apply it. It's credited towards working together. And if not, we hope it was a real, and the folks who've decided not to move forward, it has been for them something that saved them a lot of time, energy, and money, because maybe they pivoted on what book they were going to write, or chose one book over another book. Sometimes we help with that decision process as well. So we ask everyone to go through that discernment process with us before we all, green light, let's go, let's publish a book.
So how does that compare to, say, so I'm thinking, if I'm interested in working with Paper Raven Books, do I just contact you? Do I go through a webinar? What am I going to get from this? What's a great way for me to check out the company and whether or not we're going to work together?
Sure. So I do a webinar on occasion that's called it's about how I sold 10,000. Well, the hook is that I sold 10,000 copies of my book without any social media guest blogging or guest interviews. And it's really about our method of marketing, how we really use Amazon, these online bookstores to help a debut author. So if someone's interested in that, they can go to paperravenbooks.com/BBP. So paperravenbooks.com/BBP. You'll see when we're running the next workshop, and it gives you a really good idea of our approach to both the content side of how do you write what would be a bestseller book. It must be a good book. Otherwise, you're going to market it and you're going to get a bunch of bad reviews. So it has to be a good book. And how do you actually market it? How do you get it as a new author, as a debut author? How do you get it in front of the right readers? And so we go through that process. And at the end of that workshop, I do talk about, this introductory offer of working with us in this breakthrough kind of bestseller plan. And it's a good way to get started with our team. And whether we work together or not, there are no strings attached or anything. It's just we hope to provide information to you that is others, are not providing currently. Not a lot of folks are digging into the Amazon bookstore quite the way that we are. And so we really hope to provide some clarity there. But yeah.
But that's a great way for someone who's really, in the market of writing a book, really beyond just the concept. Just sit down with you and hire you for that first analysis, because I don't care who you are, it's hard to do on your own. If you don't know the process, you don't have the ins and outs, you might think, oh gosh, a book on XYZ, whatever it is going to sell, or nobody's selling a book on XYZ, so I should be the one that should write that book. But that's just me, and some of my worst ideas happen when I'm all by myself.
There have been a couple of tough conversations where I've had to say, look, maybe you can sell a book on what it was like to, be at Woodstock in the 70s. I don't think you're going to sell it on Amazon because no one's actually searching for that. So we're going to need a different marketing plan, and so whereas For some other people, what we're able to do is sort of like position the book slightly differently. So a great example would be we're working with an author now who has had Parkinson's, or her husband has had Parkinson's disease. You would think the word Parkinson's or Parkinson's disease would be highly searched on the Amazon platform. It's not. There are very, very few searches for the word Parkinson's or Parkinson's disease. And so what we've done is position it as, you know, a book on more to do with like long-term illness, caring for a partner through long-term illness, a marriage that lasts, you know, when one of the partners is ill, that sort of angle, because of course that's what her book was about all along, but she was gonna really hit home with like, this is all about Parkinson's. And it's like, well, let's, you know, we're not finding a whole lot of evidence that people are looking for that particular angle. Can we, you know, position it as like, you know, this is what you and your husband's journey has been like through long-term illness, because yes, that will apply to Parkinson's. It will also apply to chronic fatigue or, you know, tons of other cancer treatments, lots of other diseases. So we're able to kind of open up that market a little bit. And of course it has Parkinson's in the description, like that's a given, but it wasn't as like hard hitting on that one angle. We were sort of able to open it up a little bit more. So that's an example of what you can find out.
Well, that's a perfect example, though, how we sometimes, when we're by ourselves and in our own heads, we think this is something, this is the way I'm going to go. And yet you being you know, obviously knowing the market and an expert in that area, but also can see there, it's not going to be picked up that way. It needs to be picked up in a much broader context and relatability and connection with potential readers. You know, versus a very tight, narrow niche, if that makes any sense. Let's talk about the kids. How do you do this? Yes. How do you do this? Because your children are little. So I work with I think I would say the extraordinary women market's probably the 40 plus woman. So it's older than you. The children are.
She might have young kids. We lived in New York City and I had mom friends who were, you know, in their early 40s having their first kids, or their kids were still in preschool. So, you know.
Yeah. So how do you do this? How do you manage it all? And not to say it's always smooth. I mean, we all know that it's, you know, sometimes you got a 5-year-old with an ear infection. And
I was going to say, Shari, we already had to pause the recording here because I had to go ask a 5-year-old to move out of earshot because she was coughing so much.
And the 7-year-old is just not doing a very good job babysitting.
It's a school day, and I've had the 5-year-old home with me all week, and some days have been better than others. But today I happen to have a couple of like, you know, interviews where I really wanted to be present and not worrying about the 5-year-old. So I had the 7-year-old skip school. I kept her home from school, and I said, I will pay you $1 an hour to babysit your 5-year-old
Bribery, truancy.
Which she loved the idea. But then I go out there and my 5-year-old sitting right outside my door, coughing and playing with her Barbies. And I'm like, okay, little one, let's move a little farther away. So it doesn't always go super well. It's been different in different phases of life. I mean, we already talked about the long winter in New Jersey where it was just me and the little one.
Where are you now? Where do you live? I don't even know where you live.
We're in Colorado now. So
okay.
Denver, Colorado now.
Okay.
But yeah, it's been a little bit, we've moved for my husband's career and different things. So when we move and have more kids, like, yeah, things have changed. But for a while I had a part-time sitter who would come to the house 2 days a week while I would go out to Long Island and teach. And I would do a lot of my like work and stuff on the train or evenings. When we moved to Texas, we're both from Texas, but we moved back to Texas. We had a part-time nanny who I think started at 2 days a week and then just slowly increased number of days per week as my business grew and I could support that. Now,
there we are.
Okay, thank you for letting me know. Can you close the door, please?
I love this, actually. I absolutely love this because
I put a letter on our door and I had to know about it right now.
This is real life, and that's
Let's
this.
that one in.
There's no curtains here. We're not hiding.
And when we moved here, the kids were old enough that they could all be in some sort of daycare pretty easily or school. So the two little ones were in a full-time daycare, the two bigger ones were in public school. And now we're like slowly getting to that moment of freedom where all the children are in public school. Three of them can actually get themselves to and from school because we live walking distance to the school. So that's great. So, I mean, we're slowly making it work. And it's just like, sometimes it's messy. Like all my calls yesterday, I had a 5-year-old on my lap. It was like, well, the clients are just going to have to be okay with this because I don't know what else to do. I'm not going to cancel our call and go through the headache of moving calls to next week. And so let's just do this.
Have children, so they, sometimes they're writing with a child on their lap. So
Yeah.
I'm sure it works all ways. What are the greatest challenges of owning your own business? Because it's the buck stops with you.
Yeah. I mean, that's it. Like revenue. Honestly, like revenue is always on my mind. If you think about the okay, kiddo, I'm talking to Miss Shari. Can I come talk to you when I'm finished with this conversation, please? Can you go find Meredith, please? Meredith has all sorts of fun things planned for you. Okay. Okay, can you go check in with Meredith, please? Close the door. Close the door, please, so I can finish this conversation. I'm so sorry.
Hysterical, actually. That little one may end up a reporter or a journalist or something because she's right on it.
Oh my gosh, we bought this house pre-COVID, like a year before COVID, and there are no doors in this house. Like it's beautiful 1920s. Like they tore down all the walls and opened up all the space, and now the only thing I want is a soundproof door.
With a lock on one side. No, I'm kidding.
Yeah, it's
That's
true.
funny. Very funny.
But yeah,
revenue. Explain what you mean by that.
Yeah. So I think sometimes, much like when we have an idea for a book, sometimes we have an idea for a business and we're like, oh, this is going to be the best business idea. And then when we finally get the courage to take it out to clients, potential clients, and start offering to people and finding paying clients, sometimes it's crickets for a little while until we figure out how to, position our offer to the clients in a way that's really desirable. We might even say that you want the offer to be irresistible. It has to be different than something else. It has to be attractive. It has to be exactly what they're looking for, but they didn't know what they were looking for. And they're willing to pay, for the service, especially, folks like us. If we're going to be running our own business, we probably need to position ourselves to be higher priced because we're a smaller shop. And so we probably are going to want fewer clients. And so for that reason, we're probably going to be delivering products or services at a slightly higher price point to help with our margins. And in those first few weeks or months, or even heck, a couple of years where you're like really trying to figure out how do I not convinced, but how do I make the situation such that clients know where to find me, they know what I offer, and they really feel like it's worthwhile, and they're saying yes, and they're paying me money. And then even as you get those first clients in, then you're like, oh, I'm doing a lot of work. I'd like to hire a VA or someone to help in the business. Well, now you've got to pay that person. And so now you need to find more clients or find a way to increase the value of your products or service so that you can charge a higher price point, that sort of thing. And so it's like, I feel like that's the thing I'm always thinking about is how do I make it so that super valuable for our client, they're excited to work with us, and I'm able to pay my team every month. That really ends up being the thing that I spend the most time sort of figuring out. And of course that involves lots of pieces. That involves marketing and sales and the offer itself and efficiencies and reducing costs and being innovative and all of those things. But it's that revenue piece.
Yeah. That's really interesting that you bring that up, because I think sometimes we don't recognize we can't be a solopreneur forever. And even if we are a solopreneur forever, our time has to be worth or pay. We have to be paid for our time at some point. And there's a lot of, there's a lot of coaches because there's numerous kinds of coaches you can be. We hear about them on Ask. I see them everywhere. There's programs for coaches coming out of, the woodwork, quite honestly. But the bottom line is most coaches don't make any money. And the reason they don't make any money is because they sell their time very cheaply and they have not figured out what it is that they do, what they do well, and who needs whatever it is that they're offering. You didn't sound like you went through that process. Yours was more layered, where it sounded anyways, like you started, really you started in grad school helping other grad students write and edit. And then you freelanced after you finished with your master's, chose not to go on for your doctorate. You were freelancing, helping people write, both in academia as well as, I'm assuming, books and everything else. So yours was more like a layer, almost like a cake. And then I'm adding something else, and then I'm adding something else, which then makes the entire product more valuable for somebody. And who is that client, that needs all of that? Would you agree with that?
I would agree. And it didn't feel necessarily so smooth as that, going through it, I think is helpful for people to realize is that, and we all sell our time cheaply in the beginning because we have time, right? I mean, it may not feel like we have a lot of time, but it is, we feel like we have more time than money. So it's like, okay, fine. I can spend a few hours doing this. And if someone will pay me to be on the phone with them or review this thing or build this thing for them, I can do that. I remember in New York, walking the streets of by that point we moved to Brooklyn with my husband, and pushing the strollers and talking about my new website that I was putting together. And my big question was, should I say that I'm charging $18 an hour or $20 an hour?
Wow.
And I landed at 18. So like, that's where I was at that point in time. When I increased my rates, I was a writing coach for a monthly retainer of $250 a month. And I luckily had a coach of my own who point blank said, you're never going to make the money that you want to make when you are working with clients one-on-one and they're each paying you $250 a month. She's like, you can't take on enough clients to get the life you want. And I was like, oh man, she's right. She did math and she's right.
But also I want to push in, because it's not just have the lifestyle that you want or to make the amount of money that you want. It's also to feel as though you're offering something of value, because we really do equate, the doctor gets paid more than somebody else that maybe we don't need. And to some extent, maybe that's not a very good analogy to use, but truly, so many women in many ways give it away free. We give away our time. We give away our expertise. We say, I'm good at it, but I'm not that good at it. And we're waiting. I used to be a career coach, and women, they wouldn't apply for jobs because they only had, 90% of the job requirements, and the men would apply honestly when they had about 60%. It's like, I'm good to go. And I find it so interesting that women think, and that's how we get caught, that we have to be perfect before, and Ryan talks a bit about that. Morgan and I are both in the Ask Business Coaching group, and so when I use the phrase or refer to Ryan, and that's who it is, Ryan Lebeck. But we have this mindset that I have to get this perfect. Like, I can't be a writing coach if I haven't done whatever, and we come up with these standards in our own heads of how good we have to be before we can charge X.
The truth is, we're all making it up as we go.
I love that.
I have yet to be at a stage of my business where I'm not making up something new, right? I mean, of course we have, the stuff that we've done multiple times. Okay, that's solid. It's a system, whatever. But there was a time when that was new and we were making it up as we were going, and it's like, that's how it works. But you're right, Sherry, because I remember, when I was working as a freelance editor and writing coach at first, I was taking on any kind of project that anyone wanted to send my way. It was emails, blog posts, newsletters, social media content, dissertations, theses, journal articles, like whatever it was, just send it to me. And it wasn't until I decided, actually, now I'm only working on books, because books are more important. People are willing to pay more money for books. They're longer projects for me. It's more worth my time to put towards one long project. And I mean, it was scary as all get out, because I told my entire client list, I'm no longer available as of, X date. I kind of put it out in the future so they could get their last projects in with me, a couple months out. I'm no longer going to be doing these types of projects. I'm only going to be doing books. So if you've got one last thing to get in with me, get it in now. And then as of X date, it's only books. And just made that decision. And the good news was that was a decision that then opened up, okay, because I now work with books, I can charge a higher price point and become known for kind of that area, and ended up making more money that way.
Yeah. Love it. So talk about Paper Raven, the other, like, what's out there on the horizon for Paper Raven. And you sent out an email, because I'm obviously on your email list, something about this pop-up book club. And I'm like, what? I don't understand. What is this pop-up book club? Because this sounds kind of interesting, but maybe that's been around for quite a while. And Sherry just saw it, and it tweaked my interest. But so wrap it into that concept of where's Paper Raven going, and where's the publishing industry going?
I love your questions. Yes, such good questions.
I find it's fascinating, actually.
So when you spend so many years working with authors, what you realize authors really need is readers. So then my main concern, if I want our authors to have the best results possible, then their book needs to get in front of the most readers possible, preferably the right readers, the right type of readers. And you can see how that has been shifting over time. It used to be that was as easy as getting the book in Barnes and Nobles, because that's where all the readers were going. That shifted over time, and the pandemic increased that shift. Right now, there's a lot happening on Amazon. More than 70% of books are sold on Amazon. And when you add up ebook, paperback, audiobook, Audible is owned by Amazon. And that was pre-pandemic numbers. So it's been a couple of years. It's probably more than that now. 90% of ebooks are sold on Amazon. And so that's where we do a lot of our best practices right now. It's like we need to maximize that, because that's what's working now. And I'm also trying to think a few years out. I don't think Amazon's going to last forever, right? Peer-to-peer is easier and easier. Getting a book from an author to a reader in the future is not going to be that complicated. It's already pretty easy, right? An ebook or an audio file is pretty easy. Even mailing a print book has gotten easier and easier over the years. Right now, Amazon has a lot of that locked up, right? The Kindle, Amazon buys all of the IP of other e-readers and just squashes them so that the Kindle can remain the primary e-reader. They're not going to be able to do that forever. And so, pretty soon authors are going to be able to get the books directly into the hands of readers. The problem is, where can we find the readers? And so I feel like one of my next big projects is cultivating communities of readers, avid readers, people who love books, who love to talk about books, who love to, I don't know if they love to leave reviews about books, but they love to talk about their impressions of books, new ideas that engaged, that a book engaged in them. They want to talk to other readers. So not that I want it to be opportunistic and that, like, here, now I have 100,000 readers, author, I can make you an instant bestseller. Like, I don't think that that's going to play well in the future. I think it's going to be a lot more about community and small pockets of readers, and having the author having a direct relationship with those readers. And so if I can somehow facilitate that, that's what I want to do. The pop-up book clubs are kind of an experiment. To be totally transparent, it's been harder than I thought it would be, because who wants to sign up for another Zoom meeting to talk about a book, right? I thought it was going to be, we're all going to show up on Zoom and we're going to talk about books. As it turns out, a lot of readers, like, we're all kind of introverted and we just kind of want to read books. And so I'm playing around with new ideas where it's like, okay, maybe there's like, I want it to be more fun than a database, or a forum, but like some almost like library of memos where you can like get someone's honest insights on a book that they read, or if you like this book, then I'd recommend this book, or something where readers can like trade ideas and trade notes, but they don't have to be on a Zoom meeting together, because as it turns out, I'm not sure people really wanted to do that. So again, we're all making this up as we go.
But that's a very interesting point, a really good point for anyone who's listening to this podcast, is that you just try. I always say you plug your nose and jump, at the end of the dock or whatever. You just try, and you don't know what's going to fly, what's going to take off, what's going to do really well. You got a pretty good idea, but you don't know for sure until you actually do it. You have to do it to find out if it works. That's really interesting. And
it's true. And I want to sort of like highlight that, Sherry, because it said a lot, and I remember it being said, like, you're going to experience failure. You have to, be willing to experience failure, try lots of things, because most of them are going to fail. And I just remember thinking, like, but how is anyone going to recover from failure? Like, if you fail, isn't that kind of the end? And as it turns out, no, it's not. Like, I have been multiple times in situations where like I am out of cash and out of credit, and I'm like, I don't actually know what is going to happen in the next week. But it's in moments like that where you suddenly get a flash of creativity, and you figure it out, and you make it work, and you find a new client, or you find a new business, joint venture opportunity, or something happens, that's unexpected, and you feel like you get like sort of like someone just pulled you out of drowning with a rope, but like you figure it out. And so, I mean, just to sort of say that out loud, I wish that's something that I had known earlier on in my business days. It's like, the reason that people can say that you will fail is because you really do. Like, you do get to points where a team member leaves suddenly, or all the money is gone, or a client fires you, and it's terrible in that moment. But I mean, the good news is you do typically wake up the next day and you have a better idea and a new way forward. And somehow,
that's really interesting. It's like a treasure. I always call it like a treasure map. Now I have to do a lot of this talking to myself too, but that a treasure map where you try to go different directions, and you hit walls, or you hit the cave, or you hit whatever that's no entry, and you don't stop. You don't sit down at that point and say, I'm done. I'm not going to continue to try to find the treasure. I'm going to go back and regroup, and then find a different direction to go. But it's hard. It is hard. And as a solopreneur, now I'm sure your husband is incredibly supportive. Is he your cheerleader, would you say? Your primary cheerleader?
He is my cheerleader, but he has to be reminded of the vision too.
Okay.
Like, that's part of, when you start bringing in clients, you're giving them the vision of what's possible for them. You start bringing in team members, you're giving them the vision of what's possible for the company. With your family, if I'm having late night meetings, or I'm hosting a weekend boot camp, like, guess who I've got to share that vision with? And I better share it in such a way that he's like, okay, hon, like, go get him. But it like, that vision has to be so strong in me that when I start sharing it with other people, I can enroll them in that vision and really get their support.
That's interesting, though, to remember to not forget your partner, and don't assume they're going to support, even if they have no information. They don't know where you're going. And so to some extent, you have to loop them in, whether they're in the business or not, loop them into what you're imagining. And even through that process of failure, yes, honey, this didn't work.
Yeah.
This is the direction I'm going, so that there's, complete openness between you, because he is your cheerleader, I'm assuming.
Because I'm the one with the riskier proposition. He's doing his 9 to 5. He loves his job. He has no desire to be an entrepreneur. He thinks I'm a little crazy, but he's like, go for it. Because my position is the riskier one and the more flexible one, I do still maintain the responsibility of the kids and the house and the meals and all that stuff. I mean, for me, I feel like that's just part of the agreement that we've reached together that keeps him it feeling like my business is not infringing on his life too much, right? If that makes sense. Like we know he's got to be in the office for these hours. That was sort of predetermined.
Right.
And so for me to decide, yes, this business is so important for our family and our family's future too, that it's like, okay, I'm willing to take this on. And he shares the burden, sure. But I try not to sort of foist more than I have to on him, if that makes sense. I find other ways. I have someone who, helps us with meals twice a week. She drops off Indian curry dishes and rice and stuff. And so, so there's creative ways for me to get help that does like that. I don't have to ask him to take on my responsibilities. I can also actually just outsource to someone else to help with laundry or meals or things.
Sometimes your partner is a client,
Yeah.
that you have to, engage in this whole whatever, and you don't need to necessarily share all of the struggles, all of the challenges minute by minute, because that's not their job. Their job is a different job that has issues and whatnot, challenges. Where is are there times or places where you are most creative, or you get the most strategic direction, or like how do you get those ideas? Some people tell me things like, I don't get out of bed right away in the morning. I lay there in that halfway point between asleep and awake, and I get all kinds of ideas. I mean, I've heard crazy feedback as to when their creative moments are. Where are yours?
I like journaling. So I'm a journaler. I like being up early. So I do prefer to be awake before most of the family. My 9-year-old wakes up super early, but he pretty much sticks to himself in the mornings too. But I like to be up when it's quiet and just, being in a quiet house, journaling. Maybe I get out and exercise, go for a walk or something, and then come back and it's still quiet. Those are really, really inspiring times for me typically. I also do take pockets throughout the day where I'm not necessarily available. Like notifications are off. I'm not checking email. I don't have my phone on. I try to make sure that there's at least, 25 minutes to an hour during the day where I'm just sort of like letting the day kind of wash away. And maybe I even journal midday or meditate or just try to be quiet. And that's been a practice for me. I love learning. So I feel like my natural tendency is to always have a book or a podcast or something going, or, I've got another screen over here. I might be listening to like a course while doing something over here on my main screen. And so it's a discipline for me to sort of carve out quiet time where I'm not consuming content or I'm not responding to people, and just kind of letting that be a part of, especially my morning and especially kind of my midday, and ideas come.
Yeah, that's great. Great feedback. Okay, last question. There's so many different other things you could be doing. What is the source of the joy you get out of having your own business? Does it make you joyful?
I will admit I'm still in a position where if I went out and got a full-time job, I would probably be able to demand a salary that is more than I am taking home from my business.
Sure.
So I do want to say that, like, so it's really not about the money right now.
No.
And it's a hard place to be in. There have been times where I've been able to take home more money, and this is currently a season where I am I've chosen to bring on a team member who, we're just paying her more money because she's fantastic and we want to keep her. And I think she's going to help us grow the business. And so for a season, I'm taking home less. So I want to just acknowledge that as like I don't know, something that I'm experiencing in real life. I don't know if that's normal or not, but it is.
It's not always just about the money either. So
Yeah, exactly. I mean, my hope is that we're growing such a solid business that I will be able to increasingly step out of operations and take a piece home as, just as the owner, right? I mean, that is absolutely the vision for the company. And so I am doing it for like the long-term financial gain is the plan. And there's short-term sort of ebbs and flows here and there, and that's fine. And in those moments, there's occasional days where I'm like, why am I doing this again? Like the clients are getting what they want, the team is getting paid, like what am I getting again? You have to really think about it. And what I have discovered is I'm so glad that I'm no longer freelance editing at $18 an hour. Like that was not, it was something I was good at. And I think the phrase that's often used is like an area of competence or an area of excellence or whatever. It was something that I was good at, but I was never going to grow in that particular set of tasks, right? If I just stuck with freelance editing, what I'm able to do now is really grow and learn. I'm learning so much. I mean, Sherry, you and I are in this Ask Method thing with Ryan Levesque that you've mentioned, and all these online communities and programs. And I'm learning so much about marketing and building a business and leadership. And it's like that, I feel like that inner expansion of like what's possible. And that is so fun. I love building out, it's going to get geeky, I love the funnels. I love building out a good online marketing funnel. I love thinking about the system of like, how can we make this book publishing and launching experience like the best experience possible? You know, I love thinking about like the new ideas. How can we get in front of more readers? Like all of those things. I feel like I'm getting to spend more and more and more of my time in those areas. And that makes it totally worthwhile for me.
Well, and that's something that's very hard to get in a corporate position is the variety of kind of strategic, futuristic, where am I going? How could I grow this? You know, typically, unless we're even a CEO, you know, of a corp and a large corporation, you are CEO of Paper Raven Books, but this only at that level do you get the opportunity to lay in bed and say, where do I want this company to go? Oh my gosh, let's go there. And you can do that because it's your company. You are the CEO. Yeah, I love it.
It's fun. It's fun, and it's a high risk, high reward situation for sure. But I would rather lean into the high risk and in hopes of the high reward down the road.
From what I hear, I think it's in your DNA.
Wow.
You know, what do you call it, mineral rights or whatever the stuff underneath the ground. That's high risk. It's high risk, high reward. It can be. Or
yeah, you never know if you're going to strike oil or not.
You know, exactly. So tell people, just remind people where to go to find you, to find Paper Raven Books.
Yep. So our home on the internet is paperravenbooks.com.
Okay.
And if you want a direct link to that workshop that we run on occasion, it is paperravenbooks.com/BBP.
Okay.
BBP. And that'll take you, there should be an upcoming workshop that I'll be running shortly. So you all should be able to hop on there. It's a good intro to kind of our philosophy around publishing and marketing, and would give you the details of that first step of working with our team, if that were something people are interested in.
Absolutely. Fantastic. Well, thank you. Thank you, Morgan.
Thank you, yes. Thank you for sharing your audience with me. I love being in the business coaching group with you. I love seeing all the things that you're doing, and that you're influencing so many women who are thinking about a business or maybe making the jump. And this is such a critical moment to be speaking hope and encouragement into a woman's life. So thank you for leading this conversation.
Yeah, we can all do it. We really can. And if we support each other, we'll grow whatever it is we're trying to grow to a much bigger place. So I'm very grateful for our conversation today, and truly grateful for the opportunity to work with women. Yeah, fantastic. Thank you, Morgan. Now you have to go take care of that little 5-year-old.
That's right.
I have to report.
That's right. There's another piece of mail on the front porch I got to go check on. Thank you, Sherry.
Thank you, Morgan.